You know, trekking through the veldt in all this gear is a nightmare. But you know what? I'm going to take it off, yeah? I'm going to take it off. What? You want me to explain the gear before I take it off? Alright, future people. Let's just find somewhere a little less hot for me to explain for you, alright? Alright, come with me then. Let's go. To go around here to go meet the future. And I presume it's this little piece of glass here. Luckily, there's a nice little path over here. And luckily, for you, I'm doing all the heavy work. You silly, lazy future. Is this how lazy people are in the future? Very lazy. Alright. There we go. I think this will be alright. So, you want to know the attire of a British Imperial soldier, huh? Alright, you've come just to the right place there, future. So, welcome, future, to the British Empire. Before I explain the attire, and also a little surprise that I have in my haversack, I'm first going to give you a brief history about the British Empire. Think about the biggest empire ever in history. What comes to mind? People think about the Roman Empire, huge, yes. What about the Mongol Empire? The Greek Empire, did you know that Greece had the Athenians had an empire all the way back in the 5th century BC. So in human history there have been many empires, all have risen, all have fallen, some still stand, but they will all fall eventually. And in all of human history, from the Stone Age right up until now, there have been top 3 empires. Let's try and figure out the top 3. So, the third biggest empire ever was, what do you think it was? I'll let you take a guess. Yes? You think that's it? Okay, alright, maybe. It was the Russian Empire. The Russian Empire was the third largest empire in human history, and this is pre-Soviet times. This is Tsarist times. Crazy, hey? The second biggest empire in the world, take a guess, come on. Oh, is that it? You really think it's that? Are you sure? Alright. Well, the answer is the Mongol Empire. Yes, the Mongol Empire was the second biggest empire in all of human history. So the Russian Empire was in the 19th century, the Mongol Empire was in the 13th century under Genghis Khan, Chinggis, and they also hold the record for the largest landlocked empire, so no overseas territory. It's one constant empire without any splits by sea. The Mongols hold that record. Contiguous, I think it's contiguous empire. What do you think the first one is? If you haven't guessed by now, I'll give you a clue. Yeah, that's right there, the British Empire. Biggest empire in the whole world. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is the British Empire. Holding top place. It peaked in 1922. That was the height of Britain's territorial possessions. After 1922, after losing Egypt and Ireland, a few other territories, slowly, the empire slowly got smaller and smaller. But I am representing a British soldier from 1899, so this is the Victorian period. Many historians nickname the Victorian period as Britain's imperial century, and for a good reason. This was literally saw Britain going in with a couple possessions in, it had Canada, it had the Cape Colony in South Africa, it had Australia, but come the end of the 1800s and Britain ruled nearly a quarter of the world. That's right, a quarter of the world. And did you know that a third of the population of the whole of humanity was under British rule? That just shows how enormous the British Empire was. It also had India as well. Where did it all start? How did Britain come to control the largest empire in human history? So the answer lies, we go back to the medieval times. Medieval England is a kingdom, not even the word Great Britain doesn't exist in the Middle Ages. And the Kingdom of England has for centuries been fighting with France, to and fro, wondering about who should rule which land. So the idea of Britain and France was not really a set in stone thing. It was very fluid, with English kings claiming the French throne and French kings claiming the English throne. And the same thing for Wales and Scotland, although Scotland held out for quite a while. So Scotland never really got annexed by England. Ireland got annexed by England a bit later. But you could argue that the British Empire began in the Renaissance. So in the Middle Ages, England was just England, with a few territories in France that would lose, gain, blah, 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 nothing much. But it was all under Queen Elizabeth I, who commissioned a few explorers to go and explore the world. You see, Christopher Columbus had opened the rest of the world to Europe in 1492 when he set sail for the Americas. And come the 1500s, and Britain wants to catch up with the Spanish now. So people like Sir Walter Raleigh went and discovered new lands and claimed it for Britain without much real effect. But they would be followed up by further settlements. Some of them were unsuccessful, some were successful. But now this is literally the beginning of the British Empire, and eventually the eastern coast of North America was settled by the English. Places like New York. Where do you think the word comes from? York in England? New York. There was even a place called Newfoundland, which means newfound land, which was named. And all sorts. So the whole of almost all the eastern seaboard was slowly occupied by the English settlers, often coming into conflict with you. Yes, again, the Frenchies, I say. Oh dear. Yes, the French lay a lot of claim to the New World in America as well. But eventually, after the 7 Years' War, all of that territory was lost and Britain gained it all. Britain had also had another sailor called James Cook, who went to explore and found New Zealand and Australia. And Captain Cook basically claimed them for the British Empire. And that was the beginning of British Australia, well, English Australia. So another important thing, well, actually it was British, because another milestone was in the early 1700s. So the 1600s, Britain is slowly growing its empire. But come the 1700s, and wow, Scotland is also trying to create an empire of its own to keep up with England and the trend. But sadly, Scotland just cannot maintain it. Even sent a settlement all the way to South America and called the little place they found Caledonia. And it didn't even last, like I think it was a few months, correct me if I'm wrong. So Scottish imperial interests were pretty much squandered. So Scotland thought that, well, the best way to get into this wealth and tap into it is to join England in its empire. And officially, I think it was in 1707, England and Scotland merged to form Britain, and that was the beginning of Britain. If you look at the British flag, what do you think it actually means? For those of you who don't know, the big red cross, so this big red cross, is the cross of St. George, patron saint of England. So that's to represent the English, the red cross on the white background. Scotland was basically a blue flag with two diagonal stripes. That is the blue that you see in the flag, and the diagonal white stripes. That's to represent Scotland. These little red diagonal stripes were not there until Wales joined, and Wales is represented by the diagonal red lines. And together they create Great Britain. So Great Britain is now picking up momentum. They've even now started to colonize India, and India is such an important place. It was literally nicknamed the jewel in the crown because of the spice trade. So much came from India. Did you know that tea is not actually English, it's Chinese, and also Indian. Good chai, yeah. Unfortunately, it's not actually our own invention, yeah. This was all stolen, yeah. Dear me. So yes, the British Empire relies greatly on its Indian colony, which slowly over the decades, slowly expands and expands. But in 1857, there was the Great Sepoy Uprising, which basically many Indian troops conscripted into the British Army. There was a new type of cartridge introduced, which the cartridge was covered in pig fat. And this meant that the Indian soldiers had to now bite the cartridge with the pig fat on to load their muskets. And this sent outrage throughout the ranks, because it is not allowed. You're not allowed to eat pork. So this led to a great uprising, but Britain sadly squashed it ruthlessly, and this meant that the British East India Company, which was founded a while back as sort of an independent entity from the British Empire but closely related, they were disbanded, and now India was under direct rule under Britain. And also, if we go all the way to the Americas again, the old Americas, in the 1700s, things were slowly starting to boil, and what ended up happening was Britain was taxing the American colonies without them being able to represent themselves in British Parliament. So this meant that the American colonies started to rebel and rise up against their benefactors, and essentially declaring their independence in 1776, 4th of July, and hence America's born out of the British colonies, out of the British Empire. So basically, Britain lost a huge chunk of land because of the American Revolution in the 1770s and 80s. It pretty much didn't touch South America a lot because the Spanish had control of South America, but they did claim the Falklands Islands. Argentina, apparently they touched. I'm not sure, correct me if I'm wrong, but rusty on that side of history. But we also go to Africa, and Africa was pretty much untouched by Britain until the transatlantic slave trade in the 18th century. And this literally just meant that British traders would go into the west coast of Africa and import slaves for duty in cotton plantations in America. So there wasn't really much activity in Africa except for that until the Napoleonic Wars. So in the Napoleonic Wars, France was now again causing us British trouble, I say. But it was in 1806 during the Napoleonic Wars, 1805, well, 1806 for South Africa, anyway, 1805, and the Battle of Trafalgar takes place. This is literally a great naval victory of Britain over France. And this essentially secures Britain's dominance on the sea for literally 140 years. Crazy, hey? It just shows how important that victory was to the British Empire. And the seas are important because to control the seas means to control the trade. So Britain was by the 17, but it was confirmed by the 1800s that Britain was literally the naval power of the world. And this meant that it could start now going to South Africa. Many British were in the Cape Town, a city founded originally by the Dutch settlers named the Boers. But the British started to lay eyes on on Cape Town, and in 1806 a battle was fought for Cape Town, which the British won, and then they took over Cape Town and eventually created the Cape Colony, pushing out the Boer settlers further inland. And also in 1820, there were British settlers that arrived in the Eastern Cape. And aside from the history, funny enough, these were my ancestors who arrived. And I'm directly descended from Hezekiah Sefton, who arrived in 1820. I'm not proud of it. I'm not proud of it. It's history. It happened. I don't even know the people, but I do believe it's good to know your own history. Whether it is a proud or a sad history, it's still good to know for scientific purposes, and just for general knowledge as well. But yeah, the things your ancestors did, you can't really claim. I'm just wearing the outfit. My ancestors didn't even wear this outfit. This is later history. So basically, by the 1830s, Britain effectively has presence in Eastern South Africa and Western South Africa. 1834, and Britain abolishes slavery, and this is a huge thing because all throughout the empire now slaves are slowly being freed, although it would often take decades for that to actually take effect. But this also meant that in South Africa, the emancipation of slaves meant that the Boers who relied on slave labor were now angered by this and many of them didn't like the idea of living alongside the British who outlawed slavery, which meant that many Boers decided to migrate on what is famously called the Great Track. And they founded their own two republics, the Transvaal and the Orange Free State. This would be a huge thorn in Britain's side for the decades to come because Britain essentially wanted this idea of a united South Africa under British control. But this came into conflict with the Zulus, with the Boers, many other people. So this was a problem, but the British Empire being so powerful and so many resources often got its will. And in 1879, Britain invades Zululand, and after a very great victory by the Zulus at Isandlwana, unfortunately the Zulu impi chased the British into their own territory, which was technically now breaking their law again, and at Rorke's Drift were defeated. And essentially Britain annexed Zululand, bringing an end to the Zulu Empire. So empires were literally rising and falling under the heel of the British. And also in 1881, the British wanted to take the Transvaal, but the Boers beat them at Majuba and were unable to do so. But then eventually gold was discovered in the Witwatersrand. So basically where modern Johannesburg is, South Africa, this is where gold was discovered, and this now changes everything, and everyone wants to flock in to come and get a share in the gold. The Boers called them Uitlanders, outlanders, foreigners, including the British. And I say hello there, doggies. Doing all right there, yeah. Good old British dogs, yeah. Nice. Excuse me, I'm doing a bit of history there. If only it was a bulldog, very British. What was I saying? Yeah, so mines are now becoming a big thing in Johannesburg. That's where the city was founded, the City of Gold, Igoli. So this brings Britain back into conflict with the Boer republics. And what really sets them off is the Jameson raid. So in 1895, Mr. Jameson, as well as Cecil John Rhodes, organized a raid into the Boer republics to try and do a coup d'etat, to essentially topple the Boer government. But this fails. And now, now basically what ends up happening is there's this guy named Cecil John Rhodes, a multi-millionaire, a British entrepreneur. He sees a dream of connecting Cairo to the Cape. For the glory of the British Empire. He's already annexed the land above South Africa and named it Rhodesia, which would later become Zimbabwe. And this now is basically the tinderbox that lights up the Second Anglo Boer War, aka the South African War. Yes, that's sort of now my time, 1899, and the Boer War begins. And this is literally a culmination of British colonial interest, as well as, well, I suppose human nature. Human nature. So, the World War, so to skip ahead a bit, the British win the Boer War. South Africa is now completely annexed by Britain, and this effectively leads to Britain controlling almost a quarter of the world. World War I would see it gain even more territories at Germany's expense. 1922 would see the height, but eventually World War II struck, and Britain was bankrupt by World War II. Ireland was already made independent back in the 20s. So nations are starting to wonder now, when are we going to get our independence? And slowly but surely, throughout the Cold War era and the later 20th century, nations slowly gain their independence. And Britain, and finally, in 1997, Hong Kong, which was taken by Britain, was finally given back to China. And that saw the end of the British Empire as late as 1997. Crazy, hey? So that was a brief history of the British Empire. I'm sure there's a lot I've missed out on, but I've tried to keep it brief. Just an overview for you. Now let's explain the attire. The attire of a British soldier in the 1890s is as follows. So one thing you should know is that this uniform is known as the tropical uniform. This tropical uniform would be seen throughout the Sudan and Egypt, India, and South Africa. So I could literally go to many different places, but if I was to be specific, my impression goes to 1899, the outbreak of the Anglo Boer War. And as you can see, I also wear puttees over here, which I'll explain. So there we go. I must say, the view here is lovely on this kopje. A kopje is basically the Boer word for a hill, yeah? So we sort of adopt the words since we're here in South Africa, all right? We actually are in South Africa, isn't that awesome? The one time my outfit is actually accurate. All right, so let's start on the top. So on the top I wear the Pith Helmet. Ooh, it gets a bit sweaty under there. Just make sure my hair isn't so messy. So on top I wear the Pith Helmet, or the tropical helmet. This came out in the 1860s, I think. But this exact model is more of an 1880s type of design, because there are many types of Pith helmets. The one that would replace the tropical Pith helmet would be the Wolseley helmet. And the Wolseley was a slightly wider design, which would see use mostly in World War I. But come the Boer War and British India and the Sudan, and this is what British troops would wear. You can see inside, it's quite a nice design, not too hot. It's got a lot of air to breathe in, no liner, just a headband. And what is so smart about the Pith helmet is you can wet it, and because it's made out of cork, it slowly evaporates, and this cools the head. So that was a very smart design. And also the back here has a little neck covering. So if you look here, when I wear it, and pretend you're the sun, so you would see me like this. Do you see any part of my body that is exposed? No. Not really, no. So that's a neat little thing about the Pith helmet. It also has a strap here that you can put over your chin. Now, something funny about Victorian cultures, you'd think, oh, this is how you wear the strap. No, in most of the pictures, soldiers are wearing it like this. Just a very Victorian culture. I don't know why. I can't really find a reason. So all I can say is probably just the culture, just the way you do it. There might be a reason. Someone can maybe say in the comments if they know. But yeah, there we go, a nice chin strap. I prefer to wear the chin strap because I want to know if I'm moving around or like, you know, running and facing the Boer commandos, or the rebellious whoever it is, you want your helmet to stay on. But I don't know, you tell me which is better. This or this? Anyway, for talking, I'll keep it like this. One thing I've also done with the Pith Helmet is this is actually an Epic Militaria Pith Helmet, and unfortunately they are a little bit costume party-ish. It's a good Pith Helmet made out of the right materials, but it is very costume party-ish in that it was very flared at the bottom and this very bright yellowish color. I'll put a picture hopefully. And now as you can see, that was before, this is after. I wet it, thoroughly wet it, and I put weights on it with a book on both sides to not make it uneven weight. And I left it overnight and it made it much more period correct shape. So look at that. So just compare the differences, hey? You see that difference there, hey? All right, next up is the gear. So what I'll do is I'll take it off and then I will explain it as I put it back on. Bam! So this is your basic uniform. I wear my tropical service shirt, tropical service jacket with pants, puttees and boots. So the whole uniform is homemade by myself and home tailored, except the Pith Helmet. The Pith Helmet and the shoes I bought, but everything else has been homemade to an extent. So this was a normal khaki shirt that I took, and I actually tailored the collar to be correct. It should connect up like this using iron hooks. Unfortunately, just like my Napoleonic outfit, I've used Velcro. But it should close up like this. And then there should be over here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buttons. As you can see, there was one extra button over here, but I had to remove it because there were only 5 buttons on the tunics and this much space, which is perfect, except now there's this little buttonhole and I don't know what to do about it. Maybe I should try sew it shut somehow, or maybe tear it and make it look like an accidental tear. I think I'll do that. Yeah, and the buttons would be made out of brass like mine, except they would be British 1890s Imperial Army buttons. I don't have them, sadly. And the pants are simple, nothing really special about them. They're the correct hue. And the puttees as well are homemade by myself, out of the correct hue and material as well, cotton. And the shoes, one thing about the shoes is that they are actually not ankle boots. They should be ankle boots. Sadly, my ankle boots have actually broken, so I can't march in them. So I've been marching in these. But the boots should go up to the ankles and the puttees go over them to stop stones from getting in your feet and give you ankle support. So sadly, yeah, my ankle boots that I use for my British impressions, even my World War I impression, is sadly they're broken. The soles are doing the crocodile thing. Awful. All those fellow people who they recreate history, yeah, you know the crocodiles, that's when you know it's the end, mate. Ladies and gentlemen, the gear of a British soldier in the 1890s, tropical uniform. So we have over here the haversack, which is used to contain all the food of a British soldier. It should button up, but I don't have a button on the front. It knocked off when I was fighting, yeah. And here is what is dubbed the Slade-Wallace equipment, made by Corporal Slade and Colonel Wallace, I think. I forget their ranks, I'll correct it. And essentially, it is a belt with ammunition pouches on each side and the greatcoat or blanket rolled over here. Mine is very small. It's a very small little blanket, so generally they would look much bigger, especially if it's your greatcoat. Over here's a bayonet. Sadly, this is my Napoleonic era bayonet that I made. So, sorry, no, my US Civil War. This is my US Civil War bayonet. So it's 30 years off. It's not quite correct. There's no brass tip at the end as well. It should be a bit shorter and thicker, but bear with me there. And over here is the canteen where a soldier would have his water. And essentially how this works, as you can see, it's literally a belt that goes all the way from here down and there, and you thread it through all the equipment as such. Thread, 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 thread. There we go. Right, putting on all the equipment is as follows. First, the haversack. Now, one other inaccuracy is this should be made out of cotton, the strap, not leather, which is my fake leather. So this should rather be cotton, which I will upgrade later on. And I sewed it on both sides like that. Sewed on with a rectangular shaped buckle and a size adjusting buckle over here where you can adjust the size. Cool. Haversack first on the right shoulder, so it's on your left side. Then next comes the Slade-Wallace Gear. The Slade-Wallace Gear is an improvement over the older versions, the older patterns of gear for the British soldier. And it's pretty alright, but it's still not the best. But it does fit on. What is nice about it is it doesn't strap around the shoulders in that weird way that the Anglo Zulu War era straps do, but it just goes on like a belt and a backpack. So I can even grab it like this and then just put it on like a jacket. If it doesn't disobey. It's never done this before. Why are you doing this in front of the cameras? You're supposed to look good. I'm sorry there, Private Charlie. Oh, I'm doing my best. Oh dear, this army gear. And then you take your buckle like this. You see what the buckle looks like? Slide it through. There we go. It's got a little flap at the back to make it nice and together. I do not know where this buckle comes from. Have a look. I have no idea. It's definitely British or English. Could be Commonwealth, South African probably. Or even Rhodesian. And you can see it's been damaged and repaired over here. Can you see that? It's very interesting. Someone gave it to me and don't know where it's from. But luckily I could use it and put it into my homemade Slade-Wallace equipment. So yeah, like I say, the equipment is all homemade, but it is made out of fake leather, which makes it really nice and strong. And then last but not least, the canteen, also with a leather strap, and this goes on your left shoulder so that it sits on the right side. Right there. And you can see how it still creates that iconic cross-strap look that goes back to Napoleonic times and before. Which is weird because the reason that the British went from red coats to khaki is for practical reasons, especially during the First Boer War. They found that they were getting shot at so easily, standing out with all their red, bright red uniforms. So they slowly switched to khaki, which interestingly enough is a relic of British India, because khaki is Hindustani for mud, for dirt. So isn't that interesting? Just like puttees, that these leg wraps, are actually another Hindustani word for wrapping. So putty, khaki. Interesting relic of British India, which Britain imported into its army and hence adopted the khaki color and puttees. I will now explain the puttees. Alright, here we are on the felt, and here are my puttees. So essentially, these are, for those of you who don't know, these are foot wraps that start at the bottom and wind around, round to the top. So I'll undo it for you and show you how to do it from scratch. Let me just move you a little bit more lower. Before I do the puttees, one last thing. In most pictures, you see soldiers wearing their Slade-Wallace straps under their epaulettes like this. And as to whether or not you should or shouldn't, personally, I find it's nice to just slip it on and then go into action instead of having to worry about these. And also, in a pinch, let's say you fall in a river and all your gear is weighing you down, you might drown, you want to just stuff this off. So I don't know if it was regulation or not. I haven't found any evidence that it was regulation. So again, anyone out there, please help me out. I'm no professional at this. I'm simply doing my best. And considering this is all homemade except the pith helmet, like, you know, that's pretty cool. I do my best. I do my best. There we go. Another problem too, though, is my epaulette should be a little bit more to the side on the tropical tunics. They were a little bit longer, which I can see creates a problem with them being so far on this side. But it's all right. It's all right for now. And also, don't forget the little detail here. Check. I also added these little loops here for when you're sliding more equipment, different straps through around here for your valise equipment. I think it's your valise equipment, which is basically, because this is what it's called the valise equipment. It's this big, it's like a knapsack that goes on you. And I literally used, I don't have, I was going to use pop rivets, but they look too modern, so I used iron nails, hammered them in, cut the nails, hammered them to be stubby so that they don't fall out, and then added just a little touch of super glue to make sure they don't come out. And look at that, hey? Okay, the part you've been waiting for, puttees. So how to do a putty? Let me first show you how to undo a putty. So you will unfold that from inside there. This goes all the way around. I find it's easiest to take off a putty if you gather it in a fist like this and just gather it as you go, else it gets in the way. I've even got khaki socks. I don't know what socks they wore in the Boer War, but I'm just wearing khaki socks. Okay, cool. Are you ready to do your puttees? If you're actually doing it in real life, follow along or just enjoy the show. All right, so I find that it's nice to have your pants somewhere here, not all the way down there, else it's way too tight to bend your legs with the pants over here. So give it some slack. Then you take the bottom of your puttees. So you would do it over your ankle boots that go up to your ankles. Do that over the ankle boots. In my case, not. And then I find to lift your leg up is great because then you can slide over. Make sure it's tight, eh? Not like so tight that your leg can't breathe and you start going purple. But make sure it's tight. You want it to be tight so it doesn't come loose. And that it gives you good calf and ankle support. And then another one around. Then on the third one, what you're going to do is take your putty, and instead of just a normal going around, you're going to fold it over like that. You see? So it creates a fold. And that way, your putty, like this one, is nice and flush. Instead of having these things flapping that you can stick your finger in, these things mustn't flap around. Then you go here, and again, one last fold for the second time. and then normal from here. Oh, let's make sure that's tight. Another tip is if you find it starting to do that flappy thing, take the bottom and pull that as you go. Pull the bottom especially. Keep pulling that as you go, all the way. Pull, pull, pull. And there we go. We are done. And then you take the rest of your cotton keeper, whatever it's called, and you wrap it around nice and tight so it grips your foot nicely. And then you take it and stick it under, and I like to do it twice, and under and over again. That way it's sure to stay, and you could go the whole day with wearing your puttees and you won't even notice. Great, hey? And they feel nice. They give you good ankle and calf support. Now for the little surprise that you've all been waiting for. I know you've all been waiting for it. What have I got in my haversack? I've got hardtack, and guess what this is? This is called bully beef. Nicknamed bully beef, but it's technically corned beef. It's essentially a mixture of all parts of the animal stuffed into one tin with extra like filler to give it some carbohydrates, and yeah, anyway. It also comes in pork. This one is I removed the label without checking. It's either pork or beef. We'll find out, or could be both. This was your staple diet for any tropical soldier serving abroad. And over here, since if you were, let's say, in Egypt, Sudan, you could have dates. So here we've got some dates. Such good food, such good energy food. In South Africa, though, you'd find that biltong was quite popular, which is basically a form of dried meat. Really tasty, just like dates. But I'll say that I'm either in Egypt, in Egypt or the Sudan, which Britain had colonized in the late 1800s, 1880s/1890s. The Sudan, which had tried to protect. The reason for invading the Sudan was to protect the southern flank of Egypt and the Nile. So the French again wouldn't go and build a dam on the Nile to stop the flow and sabotage the whole of British Egypt. Although both flags, the Egyptian flag and the British flag, flew together, it was sort of a joint rule, which is interesting, very interesting. Which is why I argue that the British Empire could outlast so many other empires because it was somewhat lenient. Just like the Roman Empire is the epitome of this. The Roman Empire was the best at adapting, and hence it lasted for 1,000 years. If you count the Eastern Roman Empire, 2,000 years. Egypt is a cheat because they were pretty much safe and secluded in the Nile until later on, which, yeah, then they started getting a bit bad. So, bully beef, what is so incredible, let's wait for the future machine. What is so incredible is that the design of the can has not changed in over 100 years. In World War I, British soldiers were eating this. In the Boer War, British soldiers were eating out of containers just like these. Do you want to see how you open it? So you're probably thinking, I don't have a tin opener with me. You don't need a tin opener for this, because look here. It's got a little key on the top here that you remove. And then if you look on the side here, there's a little slot which you sort of pick open a little bit, just a little bit there. You stick the key in there to the side and you roll and twist. And you go all the way around like this. Yeah, can already see the bully beef now. For those of you who've never tasted bully beef, I recommend it for the purpose of history. I don't recommend living on this because it's not the best for you. It's really just made to give you energy and keep you alive. And here's the bully beef. It's essentially just a big chunk of meat derivatives and cornstarch and all of that. There we go. So now what you can do is eat your bully beef with your hardtack. But first the bully beef by itself. Yeah, it's not too bad. It's very meaty, which is nice. Or rather, it's flavorful. It tastes a bit like polony. It's got a very classic meaty taste. It's quite textured as well. It's very grainy, if you know what I mean. It's very grainy, a bit lumpy. And, yep, there we go. Every now and then you'll bite into a lump of fat. All throughout this whole thing are little bits of fat. Like here's a bit of a chunk of fat. Sometimes you can get a huge chunk of fat here. It's actually quite nice though. It makes it creamy and tasty. Now let's try the bully beef with the hardtack. This is literally rye crackers. It's literally 3 ingredients. That's how you know it should be historically accurate if it's only like 3 ingredients. Not all this extra strange added stuff from modern times. Alright, here goes. It's not too bad. It makes the hardtack much more palatable. And then some water. It's fake. Why are they giving us fake canteens over here in the army? Really, you know? Oh dear, that's why I've got this. This is my extra canteen. You can say it's historically accurate. It's a whiskey flask, tied on a string, and then just slung around you. I do this with my Napoleonic outfit sometimes. Yeah, don't see how it was not done sometimes for extra water capacity. So, let's try again. Got our hardtack, bully beef, and then some water to wash it down. And then a date for dessert. Totally doable. This is definitely enough to sustain you. Although, did you know that the Boer War, the Second Anglo Boer War, was the longest and the costliest colonial conflict that Britain ever got itself into? It took 2.5 years roughly. And yep, like I say, 22,000 British soldiers gone, dead. So yeah, I imagine 2.5 years of this. You arrive in 1899, you're eating bully beef and stuff. What an adventure. Yeah. Quite a nice adventure. Although I'm a gentleman, yeah, we're British. eat with our mouths closed. I'm surprised there's no tea in here. But after a year, when the war goes into guerrilla phase, oh my gosh, hey, it must have been quite tough living on bully beef and hardtack for a long time. That's why soldiers generally in history like to pillage and loot the countryside to supplement their diet, simply said. Cool, and then there's one last thing to show you. Have a look at my homemade Lee-Metford Rifle silhouette. So because I'm in public, I don't want it to look realistic, so I've literally just made it out of one solid thing of masonite wood, 2 layers which I glued together so it's nice and rugged, and I made the bayonet literally like you can't remove the bayonet. And on it I've popped the flag on so that when you're marching with it, look at that image, hey? Come on, wind, you're supposed to come now, that's your cue. Okay, fine, you have to make me do it all myself. Ooh, dramatic. Yeah. Yeah, so this is accurate size for the Lee-Metford Rifle, which was the standard issue rifle in the 1890s and the 1880s when it came out. It came after the Martini Henry rifle, which was a lever action single loading rifle, but this one is now bolt action. You can fire, bolt, although it was weird enough doctrine in this time period to fire, open, load, 1 round, close, fire, even though you have a thick magazine here, but you would close off the magazine and only use them in emergency, which already is giving you such a disadvantage against the Boers, because they weren't issued stripper clips to load in 5 rounds at once. No, the Boers had stripper clips for their Mausers. The British did not, so they had to fire, open, load, close, fire, or maybe you could fire, bolt for 10 rounds, which is an advantage against the Boer Mauser. But then when you finished firing, you have to load 10 rounds individually out of your pouches. These are designed for single rounds. Yeah, Slade-Wallace Gear, outdated already. Even by the Boer War, it was a bit antiqued. Yeah. Alright. Thank you so much, Future. I hope that you enjoyed. Now that you've seen the gear, now I'll go get back to the sergeant now before he shouts at me. So until then, goodbye. I'll leave the bully beef for you. I'm sure you need it. Finding your way back, alright, to your time. Cheers.